You're probably recording and you know that somebody is close to you, somebody's in the room you're recording, or somebody's in the next room. And because it's night, when you speak the way you should speak in the day, somebody would listen and might be disturbed by what you're doing. Now, intentionally, you want to speak a bit lower than you would normally speak on a normal day. So that makes you reduce your volume, reduce the level of your speaking to a degree. And that way, you're still speaking, not the way you would speak on a normal day.
Hi, and welcome to the Everything Voiceovers podcast. I'm Tcode, an African voiceover talent from Nigeria, and this is my podcast where I take on voiceover topics from an African perspective. In this episode, I talk about the circumstances that affect our minds before, during, and after a voiceover recording session, which has the ability to make or mar the final output. Sit back and enjoy this episode.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, the African perspective. Yes, it's Tcode, and today I'm going to be talking about the psychology of voiceover recordings. The psychology of voiceover recordings. Where in the world did I come up with that topic? Well, the thing is that for a very long time now, I get people send me their recordings just to hear my opinion, my feedback about it. And the moment I listen, I can tell the phenomena, the circumstances that surrounds the recording or the recording session or the voiceover that I hear or that I listen to, right? So, and when I tell them, when I interpret to them what I heard and how it was done, they are marveled and they're like, how did you know? And I'm like, oh, for a couple of reasons. One is I've been doing this for quite a while. Maybe not so much. Not so long, but professionally, I would say close to 6 years now. And I can tell when this is not going well. I can tell where you recorded. I can tell your skills when it comes to editing and production. I can tell so many factors, which I'm going to go into much later in this podcast. By the way, this episode is not supposed to be a very long one. I just want to drop some quick tips here and there, or things that I've observed over time listening to people's recordings. So let's get straight into it, right? The psychology of your recording session. One of the things that I've observed is that a lot of factors are responsible for how well your voiceover sounds. Part of those factors are the obvious ones, like how good you are, like how you can interpret a script, like your performance techniques, your ability to act and get into character and stuff like that. So these are many things that you get taught when you attend a voiceover training school or an academy or an institution or what have you. And these are good stuff because they really help you as a performer because, we're into performing arts. Voiceover is performing. Whether you're just narrating, whether you're doing IVRs, you are performing, and it's an art, right? So yeah, these are very important factors. However, there's certain factors that they can mar or make your performance. And a lot of times we don't really know, especially when we're just starting. We would have made those mistakes over and over and over again. And in fact, sometimes when we start getting better, we still don't know, or we probably wouldn't have been able to identify that, these were the things that were responsible for my errors or for my below average performance, overall quality. Now, I've heard people record and I can tell that they're very good. However, the voiceover is still below average. So the question will be, what makes a complete voiceover? Let me start from this example that I'm going to give. 2021, I became the winner of Nigeria's first voice acting contest. And during the contest or during the competition, it's normal. You'll go through the social media pages or accounts of your fellow competitors, and then you check what they've done. You want to hear what they are capable of and stuff like that. And this happened. So I would listen to a lot of people, and I knew that, wow, these people are really good. For them to even be considered as contestants in that competition, it meant that they had quality, they had something to deliver. However, one of the things that I think that I had as an advantage over a couple of them was not exactly the fact that I could do this well in terms of performing, in terms of being able to come into character, or, or maybe just my vocal timbre, like my voice texture and stuff like that. Wasn't even that exactly, or those. It was the quality of my sound. And now, if I look back, that sound wasn't really 100% great. It could have been better. But there was a little bit of, I put some efforts in trying to make it better. Now, I don't want to go into the realities of my recordings at those times, because it was quite crazy. I wasn't in the best place. One of these days, I'm going to talk about it. However, I managed with the little that I had, and I was able to do something better. I was using an SM58 Shure microphone. I didn't have access to a professional studio at the time because I did some relocating due to one or two things. So I wasn't in the studio that I would have done a very clean, smooth job. But the advantage that I had was that I knew about production. I knew about editing. I knew about how to work and edit my audio to make it sound better. So I was able to put all of those into use. And I came up with stuff that were quite okay, maybe average or above average, depending on how you see it. So I realized that a couple of the contestants, they will do their job, but then they lacked some of these little things that I mentioned. And that kind of gave me an edge. So when you listen to my recordings, even if I did not perform as well as the others, the first thing you want to hear is, this sounds good. And sounding good is beyond just your performance. Performance is a strong part of it. But the quality of the audio, the quality of the production is really important. So that is basically where I'm headed in this particular episode of the podcast. The psychology of voiceover recordings. Now you're wondering, how does the psychology of voiceover recordings, how does it relate with, production quality? I'm going to mention a few things that you need to take note of, and that will help you have a more holistic voiceover next time you're doing voiceover. The truth is that a lot of people that have been doing this for years and, they've become top dogs in the industry, they'll probably not have a problem with the things I'm talking about. Of course, they've been able to get it well over time. But, for young people that are coming into the industry with the era that we are, where people are beginning to own home studios or do-it-yourself era, this becomes a huge challenge, right? Back in the days, you have to just go to a studio, a professional studio, you record, there's a studio engineer, a producer, the person might be a producer anyway, and the person does all the cleanup. You're not even bothered about noise because that has been taken care of. You have in some cases, the vocal booth, in most cases then, the vocal booth is different from, the studio space where production happens. And all of those things just properly managed. You have quality mics to ensure that, they pick the right sounds, condenser microphones in properly treated spaces, and all you just have to do is come into the studio and record and perform. And you have a good production done. And yeah, your work is good. Now, what we're having in this period, in this era, is young people who, for some reason, may not be able to access the kind of professional studio that they want to, or they just want to explore and have a great time trying out stuff, trying out production, trying out this, trying out that, or they want to cut costs. Cutting costs partly because they want to save as much money for themselves, And then also because they're still in that very young stage where some clients or most clients will think, oh, they could throw little cash to them. And they also feel like, oh, I'm not worth charging this huge amount of money yet. So I would take the little that they're paying me and I'm going to, make use of that, manage that and do a good job. So they think. Sometimes that works, but I would say it's a ratio of, I would say a few times that will work. Why? Because what happens is when you take that route, you now become a voiceover artist, a producer, a studio engineer, and you are converting your home or wherever it is you're using to record to a studio. Now, all of those things that I've mentioned, the studio, the producer, the studio engineer, the voiceover artist, they are all serious departments of this job that needs technical expertise, right? So when you do all of these things yourself, there are high chances that you're not going to do a great job because you're not really efficient or skilled in these areas. How skilled are you in understanding how to take care of studio acoustics, for instance? How skilled are you? How skilled are you in knowing how to process your voiceover? Just knowing how to clean up your voiceover, knowing how to apply the noise and the plosives, understanding how to apply plugins, understanding how to mix and master and use those equalizers and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, you may not even need to go and do all of those stuff if you have a proper studio in the proper location, so you don't have to deal with noise. Neither do you have to deal with plosives if you know how to use your microphone very well. And many of these things. Or if you're using a proper microphone, you won't have to deal with the noise of the mic itself or some other factors, right? So the mere fact that you're trying to do all of these things yourself to save money is a disadvantage already, right? Now, how does that relate with the psychology? The relation, the correlation is, in fact, as a matter of fact, I forgot to add, you don't have a voice director. So you're probably directing yourself. So it's a lot of hats that you're wearing in one person. And then at the end of the day, you do some takes and you are the alpha, you're the omega, you're the one that tell yourself, oh, this is good enough. You judge yourself. And to be honest, in this job, it takes a lot of experience to be able to tell what exactly is good enough. It's not like it's not obvious at first listening, but when you are the one doing the job yourself, truth is you're used to listening to yourself talk. You're used to what you think is okay, right? So how are you able to discern that, oh, you didn't do something right here, you the way you pronounce this word, or you didn't put enough energy in this? It's just a very, very shaky part for you to be the judge of what you've done. And that's another conversation for another day, really. But then let's focus on how this affects your mind. So it affects your mind in a lot of ways, right? Because once you're done recording and you think for whatever reason you think, oh, that recording is okay, then you are faced with trying to get the right soundtrack and becoming the producer. And then you're faced with becoming not just the producer, but you're also faced with bargaining. You're faced with a lot of things, right, in the process. So it really affects you. Now, let's talk about the recording session, because this is even the most important part of all I'm trying to explain. Back to when I said, when I get to listen to some voiceovers, I can tell a lot of circumstances surrounding the recording. It's funny, but I'll tell people, I'll say, you recorded this voiceover in the night. You recorded it in the night and you recorded it in your wardrobe. Truth is, a lot of people do that actually when they're just starting. So let's break it down. How is it that I am able to tell you recorded it in the night and you recorded it in your wardrobe? here goes the psychology. When it's night time, it's naturally everywhere becomes quieter. Activities are slowed, or a lot of people stop being very active. People tend to want to go to bed, or they are sleeping already. We don't hear the normal noises like generators working. If you're in Nigeria, in Africa, vehicles aren't moving that much anymore. So yeah, it sounds like that's the perfect time to record for someone who doesn't have a proper studio. But you know what happens? Even you as a human, psychologically, you're already tending to feel like, oh, because it's night, things ought to be done quietly. So when you're about to record in the night, something tells you, without you thinking about it, that it's night time. You can't really scream. You can't shout. So you're taking that script, and without you even knowing, you tend to sound a bit gentler, or you tend to sound more gentle than you'll speak on a normal day. You really don't know, but I can tell when I listen to it. That's one. Two, you're probably recording and you know that somebody is close to you, somebody's in the room you're recording, or somebody's in the next room. And because it's night, when you speak louder than when you speak the way you should speak in the day, or in a noisy environment, or just not just the normal average, somebody would listen, and somebody would not necessarily listen, but the person would hear you speaking and might be disturbed by what you're doing. So now, intentionally, you want to speak a bit lower than you would normally speak on a normal day. So that makes you reduce your volume reduce the level of your speaking to a degree. And that way, you're still speaking, not the way you would speak on a normal day or in the day, right? So these factors of, you're recording in the night can really affect the way you think when you're recording. So I've talked about you recording in the night. I've talked about the fact that you're thinking you can disturb somebody listening to you. Another one that happens is you're recording in your wardrobe. So you want to record and you're in your wardrobe, and if you speak so loud, you would hear the booming sound, boom, in your ears. So you don't want to speak loud as much as you can. But then sometimes you speak loud, and the way the sound is being produced in the wardrobe and received by your microphone is totally different from how you would sound naturally, because at that point some booming effect has been added naturally by the wardrobe, okay? Because it's more like you're speaking in a box, so it's not the normal echo that you'll hear. It's more of like a reverb, a close reverb. It's so close to you that it's just so like boom, and that affects your recording. Again, I must say that this is to people who are just starting out in voiceovers and think that they can do it themselves, and they're trying to use every alternative they can get to do it themselves. Now, that's part of what affects the psychology of your recording. So if you have a script that requires you, for instance, it's a hard sell, you most likely would not be able to do it in the night. Or if you're doing it in the night, you would not be able to give it the kind of character, the kind of effect, the kind of attitude that the read requires. You can't scream, you can act. All right? So that's one. Also, the fact that you're recording in a mobile phone, I don't know how that works psychologically, but it doesn't work. I mean, because if I put a mobile phone in my hand and I'm trying to record in it, I don't know, but something just tells me it's not professional. Unlike when I'm in front of a mic, a proper mic, and I'm speaking into it. So that affects your psyche when you're recording. So let's talk about the opposite of that. How to make sure that you don't fall into those loopholes. Well, the answer is direct. The answer is getting a proper studio space, because that's going to go a very long way to correct these psychological changes that you don't need to have when you're recording. So how do you get rid of being able to or not being able to express yourself fully when you're with a script? You get a studio. Because when you're in a studio, when you're in a booth, which is better. There's a difference between a booth and a studio. You can call a booth a studio, but a studio is not necessarily a booth. Okay, so but let's not go into that, because the booth is majorly that closed space that you're isolated to read your script or to do your voiceover. But a studio can contain all of your gadgets and devices. So in most cases, a studio would have a booth, demarcated from the studio itself, and then there is a screen where the producer who is in the studio can see you who is in the booth, but both of you are in the studio because the booth is just a compartment of your studio. I hope that explains it better now. So let's move on. You need to get yourself a studio or a booth to be able to express yourself in a manner that you can scream, you can shout, you can be gentle, you can be anyhow you want to be when you're recording. Now, talk about recording in the night as well. If you look at it very well, studios are built and designed in such a way that all the kind of lights that you have in a studio are artificial lights. They're not natural lights. Well, some people may have natural lights, but I would say, in my opinion, having natural lights in your studio may affect your performance, because if you know it's morning, if you know it's afternoon, if you know it's night, the way you think in those three different phases, they will differ. So if it's nights, you probably have that sense of, it's night time, You need that artificial light so that there is a constant level of luminosity, of light, right? Of illumination in your studio, whether it's day, whether it's night, whether it's afternoon, whatever time it is. So you're not distracted. You're not distracted by the weather. You're not distracted by what's going on out there, and you're thinking, this is the time and I have to be fast. I have to hurry up. I have to, you don't have to worry yourself about all of those things. Now, you see how this is affecting your psychology, right? Because when you don't have to worry about the weather outside, you can think clearly, you can focus more on your scripts. Similarly, we have to deal with the acoustics, because if you're in a booth or if you're in a studio that is properly treated, two things about treating a studio space is that, one, it's designed such that you don't hear the noise from outside, or, the designers of the studio, they ensure that to the best that it can do, noise from outside doesn't penetrate, or sound from outside the studio doesn't penetrate into the studio. That's one. Secondly, the room acoustics is well treated, so you don't have reverb or echo or whatever. You can hear just yourself, and you can hear quality sound being produced in the studio. So that will take care of you thinking you're going to wake somebody up by speaking louder. You're going to wake somebody up by performing the way you ought to perform. Okay, so you need a studio space. You need a space that you are not concerned about what somebody else is thinking, right? That, you're shouting or something like that. So these affects your mind. So when you have noise taken care of, when you have light taken care of, you can think and focus on your script and deliver and perform better. Okay? So these are the factors that affect the way you record. The location you're recording in, the time of the day you're recording in, and the time of the day wouldn't be an issue when you're in a studio space that doesn't give you an idea of what time of the day you're in. The lights are artificial, and you can record, like, if you're recording 1 a.m. at night, if your body is not feeling exhausted, you're good. If you're recording 7 a.m. in the morning, if you're recording any time of the day you're recording, you're good, because the lights are artificial and they're constant. So these affect your mind. Then another thing that I need to put into this discourse is, for people who also record in the studio, the presence of other people can affect your mind when recording. This is another point that you should take note of, because who is there with you kind of affects how you think about yourself. And this is very psychological. This has to do with you being able to believe in what you believe in yourself, right? And not feel judged to a degree that it affects the quality of your rendition. Because if you're the type that every time somebody is there with you in the studio, you become anxious and you think, oh, this person is going to judge my read. Trust me, a lot of us feel that way. A lot of us feel that way, really. But you need to come to a place where you trust yourself and you are yourself, right? You record this thing regardless of what they would say. And then when you're done, you take the feedback and then you need to maintain that calm. You need to maintain that posture of, all right, I'm the voiceover artist here, and I am here because it is believed that I am qualified to do this. So I'm just going to do my thing and do it as best as I can. And then you wait for the feedback. But if you're already judging yourself, probably because you're seeing the client, or you're seeing a voice director, or you're seeing a producer, or you're seeing a group of people who you consider experts, and you're beginning to feel nervous and anxious, that will also affect how you take that read. So the thing is, they believe in you, and that's why they called you to that recording session. So you have to trust yourself as well. You have to tell yourself, oh, I am the voiceover artist here. I can do this. That is why I'm sitting in this booth, or I'm standing in this booth to do this work. Of course, if they could do it, they would probably be here. So it's not about ego though, but it's about understanding that your being there is justified, because before you got there, they probably have listened to your demos or your previous work, and they called you, they selected you from all the many people that they could have selected. So that justifies your being there, and you can take advantage of that feeling and do what you need to do. All right. So these factors affect how you record. And if you listened well, I have also mentioned how you can deal with those factors. If you're still recording in your home, not a studio now, just in your house, and you're using maybe your couch, or you just a makeup studio or something, you need to start thinking of a way to advance. You need to start thinking of a way to ensure that these factors will not disturb you. You need to start thinking of a way to create a studio or a booth in your house, so you're not being affected by noise, or by light, or by time of the day, or by the idea that you're going to disturb somebody with your recording. You need to figure out these things. Or alternatively, you find a studio that is not far from you, and every time you get a voiceover job to be done professionally, you go to that studio and you get it done. So I hope this helps someone. Obviously, this has been more beneficial to people who are just starting out in the voiceover industry. But if you've been doing this for a while, I'm sure that you also learned one or two things, especially with the psychology of recording when you're with other people in the studio. So that's it for today, guys. Is there another thing I've not mentioned? Yes, I also mentioned the type of microphone that you use. Oh, I should also mention what you're putting on when you're in the studio. Yeah, that's really important. If you're all too dressed up, that can also affect how you, that is definitely going to affect you. So the thing is, if you're using a condenser microphone to record in the studio, condenser microphones, of course, will pick up noises, will pick up even the slightest movement of your shirt and stuff like that, of your clothes. So you want to put on a cloth that is cotton, a cloth that when you move, the microphone doesn't pick up noises from those movements. I hope you understand. So you need to find those kind of materials that you can wear, and materials that will make you feel very comfortable. Because the truth is that most times when we record in the studio, in many cases, there are no source of ventilation in the studio, and because we're trying to shut down noise, we put off the fan or the air condition that might I've been employed to keep the room or to keep the studio cold, to keep the studio cool in the first place. So you need to put on something that will make you, or that will help you feel free, because trust me, you're going to be sweating after a while, especially when it's a very long read. So you need to wear something that's very comfortable. You also need to smell good, because if you're not smelling well, somebody's going to pick it up, and you know what happens. Person looking at you some type of way, or that kind of thing. And even if you yourself being the performer or the actor, when you realize that you're not giving a good friendly smell, you begin to feel it affects your self-confidence, right? So these are factors that you need to put into consideration when you are in a recording session, okay? Also, it's very important for you to know how to manage your phone. If you're going to be recording and you need your phone to hold your scripts, well, try as much as you can to put your phone in do not disturb mode and put it in silence, so that you don't have notifications disturbing you when you're recording. Some people would rather prefer to work with a tab, right? Maybe an Android or an Apple tab. So that helps them to stay focused and put their phone away. That's better. Some people would prefer to work on a PC and they put it on the manuscript stand. That also works very well. In some cases, some studio would have a big screen in front of you, so you don't even need your phone. The idea is that any form of distraction, you have to take it away from you when you're about to record or when you're in your recording session. This also helps you to look professional. It helps the client and the producers and the engineers or whoever is there with you in that session to respect your professionalism, rather than you picking up your phone every time there's a beep or a vibration and stuff like that. So you want to ensure that this doesn't come in between you and your work when you are recording in the studio. And just for those that are thinking, what's the best thing to wear when you're in a recording studio to put on to your recording session? Well, I heard a professional talk about this recently in a podcast that I listened to, and he said that when he's in a recording session, he prefers to put on clothes that are sporty. So the kind of clothes that you put on in maybe when you're going jogging, or when you're doing some kind of sporting activities, because those kind of clothes are designed in such a way that they handle moist, they handle sweat better and stuff like that. I really cannot explain now the science that goes into making those kind of clothes, but trust me, if you're someone that works out, you would understand what I'm saying better. There are certain clothes that are designed for working out, right? So those kind of clothes, according to the person though, he was just saying that it helps him feel more comfortable, and those kind of clothes help him handle sweat better and stuff like that, right? So you may want to check that, and that would help you better. And the idea of this entire conversation, the idea of this entire topic, is to help you focus on your script and not have to deal with the many challenges that can come in between your recording session. So the challenges that I've mentioned is the time of your recording, or the day, the location of your recording, the noise around you, the people where you are, the people around where you are, your devices, what you're putting on, then your production efficiency and all of that. So when you put all of this together, they can affect the quality of your production. They can affect your voiceover performance. All right. So yeah, that's it. That's about the psychology of voiceover recordings. And I'm sure you've learned a thing or two from this episode. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. If there are other things that you think I have not mentioned and it's worth mentioning, you can write to me. Just send your email to everythingvoiceovers@gmail.com. everythingvoiceovers@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to receive your email. If there's other thing, maybe you want to ask a question as well, send an email, and we'll be happy to receive your email, and of course I'll respond duly. All right, guys, so that's it for today's episode of Everything Voiceovers Podcast, The African Perspective. I'm sure you enjoyed it. We're building a community for this podcast on Telegram, and I'll love you to be a part of it. So you can check the show notes for the link to the Telegram community And yeah, it takes you straight to our community. I'll be happy to have you with us. So thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next week in another episode of the podcast. Till then, I say keep listening, keep learning, and keep getting better. Bye for now.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell someone about it. Follow the podcast on Everything Vios on all social media platforms. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode. This podcast is a Coded Voiceovers production.